a quote from Kayvon Harris, who's a sociologist who's written a phenomenal book called A Social Revolution. And in his introduction, Kayvon states that Iran is rarely examined through the lens of a developmental state. And he makes the observation that one reason for this is that Iran returned to pre-revolutionary income levels only 2 decades after the revolution. So basically, from 1979 to 1999, Iran was worse off in this key metric than it was before the revolution. And this is part of the idea where I think there's a perception that because Iran was not a South Korea or a Turkey in terms of its economic development, there's the assumption that Iran did not have a significant developmental drive. But the data tells a slightly different story. So for this talk, we're going to look at 4 periods of time, from 2000 to 2012, which is basically a period before the imposition of strict financial sanctions, from 2012 to 2016, which is the period in which Iran was under the very sort of harshest Obama-era sanctions, and then from 2016 to basically until sanctions relief. So that's the period today that we're waiting to see what will happen. And then finally, sort of a brief conversation about what the post-sanctions future looks in a scenario where either has a sort of reconstitution of the JCPOA with the United States or some new deal emerges. So to start off with the first graph, this is essentially the development question that I'm interested in. And this is something I've been researching over the last couple years. This is data from UNCTAD, which is a UN agency, and it's an imperfect data set for understanding Iran because not all of Iran's trade is captured in this level of data, but it's illustrative of the trend. And what you'll see is that this is from 1995 to 2019, and it's non-oil exports, which is in red, and oil exports. And you'll see that over the last basically 2 decades, Iran has managed to grow its non-oil exports significantly. And last year, and we can talk about last year in terms of the last Iranian calendar year, 1398, was the first year in Iran's basically modern history where non-oil exports exceeded oil exports. And this is quite important if we're talking about a